I thought it was an interesting clip. It is about Dawkins talking to some religious woman about evolution, and it seems to go a lot about the facts, but it really isn't, and that is, or at least from one side it seems to be. But I think there's more at play, and I'd like to play the clip first and then discuss it a little bit.
And that was then used to promote racism.
Yeah, that's Victorian. Everybody in Victorian
That
times
is the
was
foundation, though. Those who are in favor of evolution often refer back to Darwin. And he is quite a hero of the evolutionist movement.
He is a hero, but not with respect to racism. And I just told you about Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens. By the way, archaic Homo sapiens and then modern Homo sapiens. That's a beautiful series of intermediates.
You're still lacking the material evidence.
The material evidence is there. Go to the museum and look at it.
So what I go back to again is let's look at what evolution and Darwinism has spawned. Let's look at the philosophies that have come out of it that have been so horrific to our world. So we need to look at the philosophies behind and that have grown out of evolution. And what we find are the societies that are the most loving and caring, the societies that are the most well-functioning, are the ones that have a great respect for human beings, for others, because they recognize that each human being was created individually and is distinct from one another. Interesting enough, regarding that, you mentioned how the DNA is common among various species. But among human beings, each one of us has distinct DNA. In fact, that's the one. That's one thing that's quite a way that. Sorry, back up. That's one thing that scientists will use to determine who has committed a crime, is basing it on the DNA evidence. So even DNA helps to show that each human being was created individually.
DNA shows that each human being evolved individually. And of course there are individual differences between human beings, genetic differences, otherwise natural selection couldn't happen. Now I presented you with, I don't have them here obviously, but you can go to any museum and you can see Australopithecus, you can see Homo habilis, you can see Homo erectus, you can see archaic Homo sapiens and modern Homo sapiens. A beautiful series of intermediates. Why do you keep saying present me with the evidence when I've done so? Go to the museum and look.
I have gone to the museums, and so have so many of us who still are not convinced
have you seen
evolution.
Have you seen Homo erectus?
And I think that this effort, this rather aggressive effort to try and talk over us and to censor us, seems to come out of a frustration that so many people still don't believe in evolution. Now, if evolutionists were so confident in their beliefs, there wouldn't be the effort to censor out information that shows that evolution is still lacking and is questionable.
I confess to being frustrated. It's not about suppression, it's about the fact that I have told you about 4 or 5 fossils and you seem to simply be ignoring what I'm saying. Why don't you go and look at those fossils?
And certainly, if they were in the museums, which I've been to many times, then I would look at them objectively. But what I go back to is that the philosophy of evolution has led to ideologies that have been so destructive to the human race.
It's been misunderstood. I mean, even Hitler could be described as a misunderstanding of Darwinism, and that's a grotesque and horrible
eugenicists, and those in favor of euthanasia, and those in favor of infanticide.
Yes. But wouldn't it be a good idea, instead of pointing to misperceptions of Darwinism, which have been hideously misused politically, if you try to understand Darwinism, then you'd be in a position to counteract these horrible misunderstandings.
Actually, we are oftentimes forced by the aggressiveness of those who favor evolution. It's not.
So I think what happens here is very common. Dawkins talks about Homo habilis and missing wings and fossil and go to the museums but this woman is not convincible, and I think not so much because of the evidence, but because the consequences of what accepting this as truth might have. She thinks that it results in racism and eugenicism and euthanasia well, with which he probably means killing all people. And she is afraid of the consequences, and in other clips she mentions also the Soviet Union that was atheistic, and look what happened there, gulags, and she is afraid of the consequences. And that translates into a debate about the arguments that there is a missing link missing. But then you're talking past each other. You first have to get rid of this idea with her that accepting evolution as something that actually happened will also bring about in a package deal a whole bunch of bad stuff. And to me there are two different things. First, you determine whether that is what really happened, and you don't think of what consequences it would have, because you can easily make a lot of errors in thinking about consequences of things, because you have to have a model of it, you have to anticipate how people would react by believing that, and you're quite likely to project stuff on it, like, oh, what would I do if there was no almighty God to check on my behavior and to who's in my closet and checks me everywhere, and how would that affect me, or how would that affect the crazy guy next door who I never really trusted. And with thinking about these consequences, you can make a lot of mistakes, and the emotions come up of fear and anger and stuff come up really quickly. And I think you need to cut that off right in the beginning. First, you think, did evolution really happen? Is that the true thing, the way it evolved? And if that is the case, then it doesn't matter for the consequences. Then it's just what happened anyway. So you cannot change the consequences by pretending that something else happened. And I think this whole idea of, oh boy, but this philosophy is packaged with a whole bunch of bad consequences, is what usually goes wrong in many debates. And it is the same thing that goes wrong in the debate between anarchists or minarchists and statists, or between minarchists and anarchists. There it is also, yeah, but if we would have no guys with blue hats and a license to kill, then we would get into a Mad Max society in which everyone just kills each other at random and does bad things because there's no one to have a central authority with an amazing amount of violence to to keep them in check, basically. And to which anarchists, of course, say that these guys they are not different from the rest of humanity. So if you give them a license to kill, then they will bring about this Mad Max society, and that's what you also see with 200 billion people died at the hands of governments in the 20th century. So the consequences are often seen as a package deal with the philosophy. And the philosophy is just that, yeah, you cannot improve people by putting a blue cap on their heads. And you cannot improve humanity by giving some of these bad humans the right to tell these other human beings what to do. And that philosophy, if you prevent yourself from thinking right away on the consequences, then you can accept, oh yeah, that is true, but now let's move on. You can stay calm, and then you can better think of what the future will bring. Because if it is true, the future will not be really different. It's just true. If you accept Darwinism as true, it's not that suddenly people will be different than what they are. They just are what they are. And I think especially with anarchism, people are very jumpy to all these conclusions. Oh, but this will happen and that will happen, and they forget huge amount of things, and they make a lot of logical inconsistencies, and their brain goes completely apeshit because they get too emotional about what they think that might happen, which is based on so many models of what a human being works like and what could all these models, they could go massively wrong. So it's basically just all your own shit you throw out there. That is what it's. Freedom is basically releasing all your old shit, and it scares you, and then yeah, you think that will mess up the whole world. And I think the same thing happens with determinism and free will. Is that, yeah, if you say molecules behave deterministically and it's just bouncing billiard balls, and the molecules outside my head are the same as the molecules inside my head, so they have to obey the same laws. That means that everything has to obey the laws of nature. That means that everything is cause and effect. It's a universal principle. That means that my output is dependent on my current input and my previous input and what someone puts for arguments in my ears. And the thing that happens with people determinists, with free willers, is that they think this comes in a package deal as well. It comes in a package deal with chaos, the same as anarchy basically, because they think that, just like Christians believe that without morality defined by an all-powerful God, people will go ape shit. That free willers believe that without when you have the causes of people's actions charted out, then they will no longer be responsible. They will say, well, yeah, I just killed people, but that was because my father was alcoholic and beat me the crap out of me, and and that an excuse and an explanation will take away responsibility. And that's also something Molyneux said, that yeah, determinists, they have very bad things in their past, and that is why it appeals to them, this philosophy. But it is all just psychologizing and consequentialism. And why not just first forget about consequences that accepting a philosophy might have, just like this lady with her evolution. First think, is it true? And then you can stay much calmer. You can think, okay, I'm first gonna figure out if it's true, and when I figured out that, then I'm gonna figure out what consequences it might have. And then I will also be very careful that all these consequences and future scenarios that I think will inevitably follow are based on a lot of model assumptions. You have made an enormous amount of models assumptions, and they might be incorrect, and therefore the consequences that will follow can be very, very error prone. So yeah, that's what I was thinking about today, and I thought, let's make a video again after some time. There we go.